What is happening, everyone? I'm back. This has been the longest break that I've had since I started doing this. I won't bore you with too many details, but I really shifted my focus more towards face-to-face marketing this year. I really lost my passion for social media and making content and things like that. And then I'm very fortunate to have been in a position where I actually managed to buy a house, which was fun, which has been great. But the life admin was at an all-time high. So I kind of had to weigh up what I wanted to do most, and content completely went. And yet despite that, I had my busiest few months of the year this year. And I think that's just from doing a great job with clients. And yeah, content hasn't actually affected my business. However, I really want to help people. I want to keep putting free information out there because I have had some feedback which has been very nice, that the stuff that I've been talking about on here has really helped people and been enough to help them improve their lives. So that is why I'm doing it. I'll make a commitment to getting back into it. I don't know the cadence, who knows, but I am going to try and be a bit more regular than the 4 or 5 month gap I've had last time. So we are back with one that was actually a bit of a request from social media. Now I put a bit of a poll up. Turns out I've lost the ability to speak since it's been gone. And within the poll, the thing that came up as like the most popular topic was how to work out your calories. So that's what we are doing today. Now, just as a preface to this, not everyone should be tracking their calories. For some people, it can be quite damaging, can be quite triggering. If someone does have disordered and obsessive eating habits, then for me, adding in weighing out your food, writing it all down is really something we don't want to do at all. Periodically, that is not something I encourage. If you are in that position, that is where you do need to reach out to your GP, to your dietitian, and please don't sign up to some helmet on social media who just thinks that everyone's tracking and it's just completely inherently safe behavior, because it's not. It can be a great tool, don't get me wrong, but for some people it is really, really damaging. So just using it as a blanket for everyone is something that really grinds on my gears, actually. And I could go off on a whole nother tangent about that. So my position is not anti-tracking. It's just that it is a tool. And I would argue it's quite a heavy-handed tool. Personally, I tried to track for a few days and I absolutely hated it. I stopped eating the foods that I enjoyed. I ended up lying because I couldn't be asked to track things, and it just wasn't a fun time. So for me personally, tracking has not been something that I've ever done for more than a few days. However, I do use it with some of my clients when we've kind of gone through all the options and the easy fixes of things that I can quickly pick up and identify that would be an easy way of cutting calories, or adding calories for that matter, without actually having to go to the lengths of tracking calories. So yeah, I'm kind of neutral / slightly biased against it, but I do recognise that it is a valuable tool for many people and helps teach them a lot about what's in foods and what kind of quantities they should be eating. So that's kind of my thoughts on it as a concept. Just another tangent from this. Whilst I'm not always sure that calorie tracking or weighing out your food is effective, we cannot get away from the fact that if your goal is to change your body weight or your size, then calories are what fundamentally drives this. Calories are a store of energy, and if we want to reduce our stores of energy, i.e. body fat, we need to reduce our calories. If we're trying to increase our size, put on muscle, we're likely going to have to increase our calories a little bit. So just because we're not tracking it doesn't mean that it negates the principle that's at play, because I'm not disputing that. That is a thing. So knowing where your intake can be useful, even if you don't use things like MyFitnessPal. Now, the next thing that I really wanted to talk about was that I feel like when people are looking to work out their calories, they get really lost in the weeds of which calculator should I use? Am I using the right equation? Is my number right? And I think the main point that I want to state on that is that these are all estimations. So they take your height, your weight, your age, and then create a bit of a formula to assess the kind of what we call the BMR. So this is the calories that you use just to live. Then what we do is times that by something called an activity multiplier. So this is a number between, so say for example your BMR might come out as, 15, 16, 1700, something like that. Then we're timesing it by either 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, up until normally around 1.6, 1.7 as high as we go for very, very active people. Like here we're talking like professional athletes, tradies who are grafting all day, those kind of situations. But clearly times in a number by 1.1 or 1.3 has a massive effect. That's like 20% different, quick maths. And it's very subjective where we are between that 1.1 to 1.6 range. And if you've slightly guessed wrong, that's going to have quite a big impact. So hence why I say that these equations are all just estimates, and that's probably the biggest layer of the estimation because it is so subjective. So what we would then need to do is take that number that spits us out, and then we'll pick a deficit or a surplus of typically around about that 10 to 20%. So if we're trying to lose weight, we might go to a 10 or 20% deficit. So we'd take our BMR, we'd times it by the activity multiplier, and then we would minus that 10 or 20%. There are loads of these calculators online, so please just go away and pick one. Don't worry about which one it is. Like I said, they're all covering various layers of estimation, so just pick one. I am going to leave a little prompt in the show notes, so I'll put a link down there after this. And then the most important thing from that is to then just test it. So you need to stick to that number consistently for a set period of time if you are, interested in manipulating your weight from this. If you just want to know for interest purposes, so that when you grab food, you kind of know whether you're in the ballpark of what you want to be eating. But if you are someone who is looking to lose weight or gain weight, then you do need to pick a number, stick to it consistently, and monitor the impact that that has on your body weight. So you will need to weigh yourself for a set period of time to assess if it's working. Then obviously if your weight is, say for example you're trying to lose weight, if your weight isn't budging, then we know that we need to reduce your calories. Just as I said that, I thought of one more thing. We need to be very sure that we're consistently getting our food intake right as well. So that is where the precision of your weigh-in, making sure you're not having the odd sort of scoops of things here and there, grabbing some of your kids' food, getting a coffee that you forgot to input. Because we need to be very sure that we are adhering to what we think we're eating in order to know whether the calorie equation is right or wrong, because then we can adjust. And I know that is a lot going on there, and that is why my general bias is not so much towards tracking. But if you are going to do it, you do need to be quite precise if you are wanting to quite accurately work out where you're at. So just to summarise, we're taking an estimation, we're letting it work for a bit, then we're reflecting on it and seeing where our weight has changed, and then we can adjust if necessary. Even just for 1 week is probably not long enough, because sometimes there is a bit of a lag time between making a change and our body actually changing body weight or body fat. And so I'd be sort of thinking around about that 2 week mark, just sticking to an intake, making sure you're doing it consistently. You're not having those blowout on the weekends as well. And I suppose on that, it is our weekly averages that matter. So even if you are hitting that number 6 days out of 7, but then on that 7th day it's wildly different, unfortunately that is going to change your average. So until we're getting very, very consistent, we can't necessarily know where that number is at. So that is actually everything I wanted to talk through. So it's not a magic tool, it's not going to solve everything, but it's also not worth stressing about. Because there are so many layers of estimation. The most important thing is just to pick something, roll with it, and then reflect and adjust after that. Like I say, I'll put a prompt in the show notes here, and hopefully I'll be back in touch with you soon. Not really back in touch, is it? I'll just be talking to you. It's a one-way conversation really.